Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kathy G podcast. The mission of my podcast is for us to realize that we're great and that we can be even greater. And most importantly, how can we really bring this greatness to the world through our brand? So, why the Kathy G podcast? Two reasons. One, I really care about humanity deeply, and I want each and every one of us to really see how great we really are and to be happier and successful as a result. And number two, because look, I'm just like you. I struggle with my own feelings of being less than, or what's my brand, or what do I do next, just like everyone else. So some days are great and some days are ugly, and we're all going through this together. So this time, I guess every time I say this, you're in for a treat, but truly, like some guests like are just I feel like I've known them forever. And I have not known Tom Garcia very long, but I feel like I've known him forever. This is the Who and What is a Healer podcast subseries of my podcast. And Tom, welcome from Colorado. Thanks for
Thank you.
being here.
Yeah.
So, Tom and I met through a community we belong to called Product Launch Formula. And I just kept getting this sign that, you need to connect with Tom Garcia. You need to connect with Tom Garcia. And I was like, who is this Tom Garcia? So he was so welcoming and warm and accepted also my invitation to be on my podcast. So, again, welcome, Tom. And if you don't mind, I know more about you than my listeners, but boy, they're going to love getting to know you. So share whatever you want to us to know about your story and how you got to where you are.
Well, let's see. I'm a retired chiropractor. I was in practice for almost 30 years, and I've been out for the last almost three. I'm happily married, and we have four beautiful children and two grandchildren. And I live in Southwest Colorado, just outside of Durango in the mountains, and have a lot of access to acreage and the woods and trails, and really love where I live. And I segued out of chiropractic into, you know, I work with people in a coaching capacity, in what I call deep coaching, but I resisted the word coach for a long time. And I'm still not entirely comfortable with it. But I also call myself a shaman. And that's an identity that I claimed for myself several years ago after being told that from my own inner guidance many years before that. So it took some time for me to come to grips with that moniker, if you will.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. So why, first of all, there's so much to unpack even in that little bit, and I know I interrupted you, but
That's all right.
why um why did you refuse or push back against being called a coach?
I just didn't see myself as a coach as I knew coaching,
Yeah.
from sports coaching to, life coaching. I just didn't see myself in that capacity, even though in my practice, I coached my clients essentially, my patients, but I always felt more like, you know, the advisor, the guide, helping people to see their way through their health issues and such like that. So now, I just do what I do. I call it guiding, deep coaching,
Mm.
um, teacher, in that capacity.
So that's fascinating because I identify with that. I refuse to call myself a coach because it feels a little amorphous. Like everyone can be a coach at some capacity, right?
Right.
And then what does that really mean? What are you coaching me on? And is it broad? Is it not? So I really, really feel that from you. For the folks who are not familiar in my audience, can you give a little background on what it means to be a shaman, or if somebody's never heard of that term at all, explain it.
Yes, and so I know it can be a bit of a like, what is that? And I was that way too, actually. When I heard it, I'm like, I don't know if I can call myself that, but that's what my guides told me. And like I said, it took me several years. There's a backstory there, just by referring to that, you know. Um, but the word actually requires some redefinition from my perspective, in that the word shaman is the word that most closely describes how I work and what I do. So I work elementally. I work close to the elements on the earth. I work with fire, the element of fire, in the open sky, and with water and spirit. So it's just like all like an elemental approach to working with people and helping bring about the transformation that people are looking for themselves. And so shaman is the word that most closely fits what I do.
So shamans come from a line, is that right? Generally,
Well, there's
what we
several
know.
ways. Someone can study to be a shaman. This is a great question. Others come from a lineage, or others, find a teacher, or all three. In my case, I didn't have any of those. It came from my work on the land over the last 15 years. I'd say on the land at the fire, working mostly alone, and listening deeply, and writing down what
Ah,
I heard, what was spoken to me, and so yeah, it's very much. So my work, I call my work "Reclaim the Sacred," which is to
mhm.
say, it's about taking back or reclaiming what is ours in the realm, in the way of what's sacred in our lives. We're sacred. Who we are is sacred because of who we are and what we bring to life. And everything has intelligence, so it's sacred, which is to say everything is sacred. But we don't operate that way in normal everyday life. So it's
Wow.
reclaiming or taking back that awareness and living, moving, breathing, moving through the world with that
And I
awareness.
almost feel like it's a stupid question to ask, but let's have it so you can lay it out for us. What are the results of reclaiming the sacred for ourselves?
Feeling more deeply connected internally to your own spirit, to the to that which created you. So what I, the I'll say this: the crux of what I do, the centerpiece of what I do, is helping people to deepen and strengthen their connection to source or the creator or God or whatever we call it. And um, I often use a ceremonial setting. So when people come out to visit me and stay with me, we spend a lot of time in the woods at the fire, and I do ceremony. I create a ceremonial. What I do is create sacred space, a safe place in which we can come together and go deep. I was just describing this earlier today to say it's as if we come to a threshold together. We cross over the threshold into this place that's out of time, out of space, and close the door and leave our egos on the outside so we can have a little time together without the egoic influence to see something about ourselves, to learn something about ourselves of value. And that in itself is transformational because when you leave that space, you take that experience with you. We didn't sit in a room and talk about or conceptualize. We actually had an experience together. Yeah.
Wow, just hearing that, and I have gotten, for those of you who are not familiar with Tom's fire circles, I got an opportunity. He did one on Zoom virtually, and I'm sure you had people who are like, "How's that gonna work?" But it was so beautifully done, and I felt so connected. And there was, as I said to him later, I said, "That lit me up. The fire circle lit me," and I wasn't even trying to be funny, but it really did. And everyone must experience this process because it's so clear that he is in gentle command of the grace that's coming through him. And for those who are wondering, what do you mean when you say you hear things and you help us access source? I want to get to that in a minute, but I want
Mhm.
the backstory because my audience are professionals, right?
Yeah.
And they all know my story of how I went from becoming a securities lawyer to being the branding expert, but really the healing that my work brings through. And I'm just coming around to owning that for my life's purposes. So I'm honest about that. So how did you go from discovering 30 years of being having, so I distinguish it a little differently. I say we have an identity, which is who we are as the divine, like that no one can strip of us because it's how we connect to God, to source, to spirit, whatever you want to call it. And then there's roles. So my identity, I had to extricate from my role as a lawyer or my role as a wife and mother. So how did you decide to change roles and really sit into your identity?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I just want to tell you, I love what you said about gentle command. of the space, because that's very much how it occurs for me. I have a gentle command of the environment and of the ceremony, and it's an invitation for people to come in with me to go to that place. And what I find consistently is people recognize fire. They
Mhm.
recognize like this primal element, and it's mesmerizing, and it helps us to drop into a deeper place, a place of what I think of as closer to the truth of who we are. And
Yeah.
that's really that's what I'm going for. If there's could be said to be a goal or an intention, it's that, you
And
know.
you know what? I have to share this with you. I'm so glad you brought that up. So, I, by birth, my religion is Zoroastrian. I'm Zoroastrian, and I don't know if you know anything about that. Most people
Mhm.
don't. They're like, what is that? Is that like Zorro being an Austrian, which I think is the funniest thing ever? But
Mhm.
we have been mislabeled throughout history as being fire worshipers, and we're not. We're not. We're not worshiping fire, but we hold fire sacred. And I really felt that in your circle because it's
Yeah.
sacred. Why? Because our prophet Zoroaster said it warms you up. It allows you to eat. It provides light. It provides peace and grace. Like something like that should not be extinguished. There is something sacred and very um, loving about that, right? And so I felt that while I was in your circle.
Yeah, well, the fire is a creative element. And just as we have for thousands of years used fire for warmth and light and to come together for community and to cook our food, it's also a place where people connect with the divine. And so that's been my experience. I didn't start out that way. I mean, like you said, I was a chiropractor. So conventional, you
Mhm.
know, not straight laced necessarily, but, I was in a more conservative role, like you said, roles. Being an attorney and a lawyer, that's pretty darn conservative in our culture, and I think most people are hungry for something more, hungry for something more authentic within themselves to be expressed through their life, through their work. And that's what was happening for me. But the turning point, and I believe all of us have several, if not one, really significant turning point. The turning point for me was a really close friend of mine spent the last 18 months of his life in our home, and my wife and I took care of him, which was crazy because we didn't know what we were getting into. We didn't actually know he was dying. And from a practice standpoint, it was suicide for my practice because I ended up closing my office and bringing my practice home so I could take care of him. But I loved him like a brother, and it was inexplicable that I would do such a thing, but I did it. And what happened, what I say is I don't know what happened to me. Just his withdrawal from life, and to have a close up view on that. And anybody who's ever taken care of somebody up to their dying breath and seen them off at the precipice knows what I'm saying when I say that it just changes you, and it changed me. And I started going to the woods early in the morning before sunrise, in the evening at sunset. I'd often stay out all night, and I started making fires and finding a place where I'd kneel and pray. Now, I didn't really know what I was doing when I say that I was praying, but I'd open my journal and I'd journal the things that came to me. And over time, a couple significant things happened. One is a voice came to me, a very distinct voice. I know it's my voice. It's the voice that when I hear it call to me, I know it's calling. It's like the way you know your mother's voice in a room full of mothers when she
Yes.
calls your name. That's how I know that voice. And I
Very clear.
started, yeah, it's very clear. And a ceremony came through me. And initially I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, what is this? But after a while, I stopped asking that question because I recognized it. I knew that something really powerful was moving through me and it expressed in a certain way. So now, like the fire ceremony you came to, for example, it's in a very well defined space. I have a circle of rocks in a big
Yes.
circle. And then in the middle is the fire pit that I built. And rocks are arranged around it to sit on. And then I have a place where I kneel and work. I say where I do my work. And I've spent, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of hours at the fire for the last 15 years. And I kneel because that is the appropriate posture for me in doing what I do at the fire. And so with my friend Jim, now he passed away 12 years ago yesterday. And I always
Mm,
remember the date of his passing. It was 12 years ago yesterday. And so I would make these fires, kneel and pray, and do this, what I just say in my work. And I did it mostly by myself for a lot of years, even though the voice that guides me would say, you need to bring others to the fire. These messages and this that we have for you is to be shared. So I started
mm.
bringing to the people to the fire one by one and in small groups. The community where I live would come to the fire, and I held fire ceremony for a long time just for our community. Now that's my work. But that was the turning point, and that's what I'm getting to. That's where everything turned for me, and so all the for the remaining years I was in practice, I knew there was a deeper calling. There was something more that my life was being called to. It was evolutionary, and I followed the call. I trusted myself enough, and I trusted the voice coming to me and through me enough to follow its guidance to do what I'm doing now. And
What?
that's significant. Trust something enough and to trust yourself enough to leave what you know, to leave what I know, what I knew, to embark
Mhm.
on a different path. So,
What a beautiful story. And that actually brings me to my question. And maybe this is the part where you start sharing these lessons for those of us who are listening, who are going, okay, he did that and Katie did that, but how do I do that? And how do I trust that
mhm,
voice? And how do I even listen for that voice? And are you too crazy? You were a successful lawyer, you were a successful chiropractor, and you just left it all behind. And people know what I say to that, which is, I didn't really have a choice and I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. I honor the profession. I now work with lawyers because I want them to be either happy there and proficient and productive and enjoying their money, or doing something else so that they're a contribution and loving life.
mhm.
But what do you say to people that say, I don't know where that voice is, I don't know how to find it, and how are you two not crazy, and why would I want to do any of this? So maybe it's multiple questions, but I think it's subsumed in one theory and maybe one lesson.
Yeah, first it begins with a desire. Like I
Mhm.
wanted to know. I was asking. So you have to begin to ask. Now I wasn't asking for the voice per se. I didn't know that was going to happen. But here's what happened when my friend passed, and I'll tell you this. And the questions for me, they live at the fire. I remember going to the woods and building the fire, and I'm out there. It's this time of year. It was October, full moon, and I'm standing there and looking up at the moon, saying, "Who am I? Why am I here? And who sent me? Who are you? And why did you send me here?" It was very much like that. I mean, I said it with some force and some energy, like, why did you send me here? I want to know. And it was that kind of desire. I want to know why I'm here. What is my purpose? And that seemed to be the catalyst that broke things open for me. It was those questions that I began to answer more deeply for myself, and that the voice came through to say, here's why you're here, and here's who sent you. So it was really about deepening my connection, my relationship with that whoever,
Mm.
that intelligence that inhabits me, developing a relationship with that intelligence that inhabits you. If you want to know, you have to cultivate a relationship with that intelligence, and it's
That is a
inside.
very important point. Yes, that intelligence is what when you say it and when I say it, source, or when we say it's something that I hear or I know or I get, that is within us. That is not woo-woo craziness outside of us. It's not like we're hearing things that we shouldn't be hearing. It's everyone's right to hear that. And the messages are always there. You can hear the desire is what you're saying is important. And I would add one layer based on what you're saying, if I could reframe it, it's curiosity. You got to be curious before you can desire it. And then you got to allow for that to come up, right? Through
Yeah,
silence. That's what I
silent
do.
and
What
quiet
are you?
listening. Listening is really important. I want to add something else that just came to me too. Is I was adamant. I did not want someone else's version, some other version, a substitute version. I didn't want it given to me. I wanted my own direct experience of spirit coming through me. And that's why I worked alone and mostly at night, because I didn't want other people around me to interrupt my own experience or to tell me this is how it's supposed to go, or to go to, say, a Native American ceremonialist or a shaman, and they tell you, oh no, you got to put the this way and that way. I didn't want anybody telling me anything. I wanted my own direct experience. And once I was grounded in my own experience of it, then I started looking around and finding, oh, there's universal knowledge that's available to all of us. And I found it in the books I read and the people that I talked to, other coaches and people of that quality, of that caliber, that started showing up in my world. And I realized, oh, I was getting it straight from the source, and it's consistent and it's reliable. And I believe all of us can have that. You just have to ask for it and be really clear that you want to have that experience directly.
And what does that experience do for us when we have it directly? What do we get? I don't have time, I hear people say. I'm sure some of my listeners are going, I'm busy. This is nonsense. It's good on the weekends if I had an extra five,
Mhm.
10 minutes fleeting, but I got to put food on the table and I've got deadlines and
Yeah.
obligations. And maybe Tom was just lucky and Ketty was lucky because they were in a lull or they had enough money and security. Let me tell you, I didn't. I had a good savings, but I wasn't prepared for the road I was going down. I mean, but I just couldn't go any other direction. So what do you say to that?
I didn't even have a good savings. I just started doing it. But the thing of it is even in the face of being busy and all the demands and the responsibilities of life, it's an imperative. That's the thing that we step over. The present, being present to the presence, or being willing to connect with the consciousness that created us, and then we rush headlong into our lives. And I guess you could say, how's that working for you? Well, I've got lots of money. I'm well invested. I've got the dream life. And if you're happy, then that's a good
Good.
thing. But if there's something more, then the something more lies in your relationship with your higher power, by whatever name you give it. How it occurs for me is that each of us, we are a distinct consciousness, and we have a direct communication with the creator of that consciousness. So we are receiving and sending channels, if you will. And the extent to which we make a difference in this life, that we connect with others, that we can share of value, wisdom, guidance, our own path in a way that's a contribution to another person, we can't escape doing that work.
Mm, mm.
It's imperative.
I think everyone eventually will get a calling at some level. They may not necessarily have it show up the way it showed up for you and for me. I mean, you and I had very different experiences. No one has the same experience, right?
Right.
But it does stem, like you said, from a desire born of a curiosity. I was like that. I
Mhm.
remember going around practicing law and I had a very successful career. I was at the firm at the time in Washington, D.C. It doesn't get any more legal than that. And I'd walk around and go, hey, so and so, to other lawyers, is this all there is? What are we doing here? Like all day long, I set up hedge funds, take them apart, set up mutual funds, work with brokers, make companies more money. Like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing forever? Like, what
Mhm.
happens at the end of this? And people would look at me like, what kind of a question are you asking? Go back and bill. But I was, like, stuck on that. I'm like, "There has to be more." And I know the pandemic opened that door for people, and I see them walking through it more and more, whether they find me or you or we're not I'm one person, you're another person. We don't cater to everybody, we're not supposed to, but it is, I consider my job and your job to carry the message so people have options, and
Mhm.
they have to have their own experience of it for sure, I believe. So, what do you think is the starting point if someone's curious and wanting to know how to answer these beautiful questions of who are you? And I will put these in the show notes. Why are you here and who sent you? Correct? Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's it. I'm going to make an assumption that whoever's listening to this has that kind of curiosity, and that
Fair.
we're actually not talking to people who aren't interested, because if they're not interested, they're
They're
not
not
listening to
listening.
you
They turned it
or
off,
us having
which
a
is true.
conversation. So it begins with that desire to know from a deeper perspective, who am I and why am I here? And but even more importantly, and how I understand it is, when you answer the question for yourself, who sent you, or what your relationship is to that which created you, that inhabiting intelligence, then why you're here and who you are in the matter get answered. So it begins with taking the time to deepen and strengthen your connection with your creator, with that which created you, by whatever name you give it. And that takes time. Like any relationship of value takes time. It's cultivated.
Mm.
And you cultivate a listening for its voice as it speaks to you, as it guides you, and you follow that. And it may very well guide you right out of the practice of law into something else, or more deeply into the practice in a different capacity. But whatever you're doing, it's guided. It's not just your ego going, well, I'm going to do this, now I'm going to do that, and I'm going to make X number of dollars, or I'm going to bill this many hours, or whatever the case. It's from a deeper place, and you feel that and you know it.
I love how you call it a relationship because up until that
Mhm.
moment, I've been on a quest for many years now. The only thing that really matters in my life is my connection with my divine, right? And I know that sounds crazy because I have a lot of people I love and care for and my clients and this practice of mine, but if I get that straight, I get everything else straight, I feel.
Yeah. So
And
that's always first and foremost.
that's why. And
That's
it's a
foundational.
relationship.
That's
I
the
love
core.
it. Yes.
Yeah.
So what do
We often
you
think of
go ahead.
the
No, go
pie
ahead.
of life. Yeah, we often think of the pie of life. You have your financial world, your family, recreation, your spiritual life, your community service, like that. And I was looking at that not long ago, and I'm like, there's something wrong with that model. And I think of it more as a bunt pan. In the center is your relationship with source, and then from that center, all other aspects of your life radiate out. And if you attend to the center, the rest of your life is fed. But you can't treat that aspect as just another pie in your pie of life.
Mm, mm,
As so
mm.
often the case, we so often will neglect one area as we're pursuing another area. You know, Oftentimes people neglect their health while they're working hard to establish their career, take care of their families, especially women. Taking care of the kids, taking care of work, their clients, etc., and their health suffers. But and the central theme is attending to your relationship with your spirit, and all else will follow in a good way.
That is lovely. And we struggle against that. I want my
Mhm.
listeners to know that Tom and I are sitting here talking about this and it sounds so easy and so lovely and so blissful and la la la. And every day is uh I don't want to call it a struggle. It is something to awaken to and to
Mhm.
deliberately focus on, I would say. And I'd like to hear your views on this. And so fear gets in the way, is where I'm going with this. And I
Mhm.
deal with that moment by moment. If I'm not consciously staying in joy and connected to my source versus my ego, and I will ask for you to clarify that in a minute, I'm in fear then, and my life isn't going anywhere. And I think that's what you're saying when that center. And thank you for that graphic. When you're
Mhm.
connected to that center, how do you know? And people, I'm sure, are asking this. I hope you're asking this, listener. Because you're happy, right, Tom? And then everything else just works out. So when I'm in fear, I'm not happy. So what do you say when people come to you and go, I don't want to figure this out, or you're crazy, because it's scary for them, right? It's scary every day, right? It could be if we look at it that way.
Yeah. Well, one thing about fear is the ego is steeped in fear.
And
If
tell
you
us a little bit about that ego as you're talking about fear.
Well, the ego is about protecting itself. It's about getting what's yours. It's about looking good, achievement, success, recognition, acknowledgement, accolades. You know, am I following the plan? I'm going to
Mm,
make a plan, like that. That's all ego. And, so this isn't about annihilating the ego, but it's about bringing the ego in service to something greater than itself.
well said.
And so spirit is aligned with love, the ego is aligned with fear, if you will. Simple as that. And so when you're feeling fear, you can be certain you are in your ego. You are judging, you are evaluating, you are, measuring,
Compare.
weighing,
Mm,
comparing, right? Yeah, but judging is actually the probably the if we took all the rest away, judgment is the primary one. You're in judgment. And the antidote to judgment is forgiveness. Forgiving yourself, your thoughts, forgiving yourself, your thoughts about yourself, about the other person, about the way that it is, and being more accepting. And to be accepting is more of a calming place, a more of a calming energy. What else did you ask in there?
well, I just
There
love
was
what
several
you
questions.
said. There's so many good sound bites to that. But when you're
Mhm,
accepting, I have found, so I do a lot of work in diversity bias because of what's been going on, right? And I
mhm,
just chaired that at the American Bar Association, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. When you are not judging, you're accepting, right? And you are then allowing others the freedom to be who they are. So part of my
right.
prayer today, and it comes from part of Louise Hay's wonderful book, You Can Heal Your Life. If you're
Mhm,
a listener, order that for yourself. It's miraculous. And part of what I say every day is I allow others the freedom to be who they are, because that
yeah,
allows me the freedom to be who I am. And that takes away that judgment, right? And that
right.
comparison. And it just feels a lot lighter. Now, I know we're getting into some deep stuff, folks, but it doesn't have to be that difficult. It's just about every time you judge something as good or bad, right or wrong, what, Tom, step back and go, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just neutral and I don't have to put a label on it. Does that work? What do you think?
Well, we're not going to escape judgment. That's just how we're wired. The ego is well developed. It's well developed in our culture. It's everywhere, and we're just naturally prone to judging. But to catch ourselves, to begin the process of gently retraining our minds to look with forgiveness, to look with acceptance, to be more forgiving of ourselves and more gentle with ourselves. So, beginning each day with taking a little time just to focus on that, to focus on the connection, as I was saying. But here's something else too. You're saying tongue in cheek, like who's got the time, and it's woo woo, and it's be nice if I could do that. And often how it occurs for me is, who would choose this path? Because this is freaking hard.
Yeah.
It's work.
Oh, I agree.
It
It's
takes
so hard.
diligence. It takes vigilance. It takes a kind of a ferocity to stay on the beam, and I go off it all the time and I just get back on again. And I catch myself more when I'm judging other people, making up a story about them. And it's like, okay, just stop. A lot of times with myself, it's, would you just stop? And then I do. But
That's
it
so,
helps to have a practice. This
yeah.
probably sounds familiar, doesn't it? Would you
Yeah.
just stop?
Yeah, I mean, I go through that moment by moment. I remember years ago when I first started this work, like trying to figure out who I was, I got connected with someone who really became my mentor and my guru. And she said, "This is a very hard life for you." And I said, "Oh, what does that mean? Am I going to be crippled? Blah, blah." And she goes, "Oh, no, 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 none of that. Lots of good stuff. But this is the life where you figure out who you really are and connect with your divine." And it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, oh my gosh, like, this is work. So I'm
Yep.
not sure we're selling this very well, Tom. Maybe we should like put more flowers and daisies and puppies and rainbows around this.
I wouldn't want to do that either. I often say this path is not for the faint of heart. You know. Now I'm clearly on, and you as well, on a particular path that has, for me, it requires a certain devotion and a
Mm,
commitment within myself. But it's not dissimilar from when I was in practice as a chiropractor. It still required clarity, integrity, commitment to my people, and just, staying on the beam with my work like that. So anybody's profession or line of work can be held at that level of, it's a commitment, and it's, this is my life's work for now. But it would serve us to, I think I bring my hand in like this, to bring in the presence of spirit, the presence of God, how, by whatever your faith is, to bring more of it to bear, you know for the good of all.
And because it can be that support and that um the Gabby Bernstein said it really well. It's the universal truth. The universe does have your back, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she used it for her books and now it's become her thing, but it's really the truth of it, right? We have more support than we could ever believe, and we're not alone, right? And that is what's the word, backs us up the best, assuages all these fears that we have. But it's so hard for me to remember that Ketty, you don't have to take this on yourself. You don't have to take this launch on by yourself, right? There are so many guiding forces behind this launch. You know what I discovered makes for a successful launch? Those of you who might be listening who understand what we're talking about launching products online, 90% is if I just stay in a joyful place no matter what's going on, then 10% really becomes about the launch. It's an important 10%. I do not demean that 10%, but when we look at the reality of how much is the internal work of just showing up, like just vibing in a good way versus putting so much grunt work and effort into a process, whether it's your practice as a chiropractor, as a lawyer, that weighs you down and makes you not show up emotionally resonant, right? And
Right.
then you
And
wonder why nothing else works out.
that underscores something in what we're just talking about here all along, is the the value of having just a daily practice. Just 5 minutes, 15 minutes, a half an hour where you just sit. Okay, so I'll tell you, for me, what it is for me.
Yeah, share your
Get my
practice.
coffee, I get to my chair. That's like first. I get my coffee, I get to my chair. I know when I get to my chair, I can reach over. I happen to be a student of A Course in Miracles. So I reach over, I take the course, I open it, and I start reading. And then I just quietly meditate on what I've read. Oftentimes I'll go through a little wild goose chase, just looking at different things. And then I might journal for 5 or 10 minutes or more, depending on how much time I have. But I do it every single day. I hardly ever miss for any reason. It has to be like a full blown emergency for me to not do it. So it's get my coffee, get to my chair. That's how I start the day. No matter what happened the night before, no matter what I'm looking ahead for the day coming, no matter how I feel in the moment, I know if I just do that, everything's going to be okay. Because that's where I get centered, where I get connected. I feel that connection. It's a feeling. And then I take that feeling into my day. And I'll often refer back to something I read or the lesson for the day to help reconnect me or ground me once again to the energy of the day, the energy of being connected to source, like that. So, and that's when things are calm and when things are quiet, so that when the shit hits the fan, I have some resource. I have some sense of, okay,
Groundedness.
I'm grounded. Yeah, exactly. And then on a deeper level, I say deeper, when I have more time and when I take more time, I'll go to the fire for sunrise fire, or I'll go in the evening and make a fire in the evening, or I'll take somebody with me. I take my kids to the fire and make a fire, create sacred space. I do this little ritual, and then we're in for a little while, and it's very grounding. So it's just a practice, whatever your practice is. It doesn't take much. Light a candle, assemble, create a little tableau of objects that are like that for you is an altar in your own mind, whatever that represents. So when I make an altar, when my eyes fall on it, and I have them all over the house, little tableaus of things, it reminds me of my connection to
Yes.
source. It's a reminder, and the power isn't in the things. And I say this with all the stuff I lay out for my altar when I'm in the woods. You could take all of it away, and I still have my connection. That's what matters, because the altar's a devotion. It's not a thing, and the devotion is within. And
Mhm.
so, you know, at the risk of sounding religious, or to sound religious, It's all the same to me. Spiritual, people say, are you religious or spiritual? It's like, don't ask me that question. It's about being connected and taking the time every day to clarify that connection so that when you move through your day, you have that going with you. I notice when I skip it, when the times have happened that I've skipped it, the day's different. I don't
Totally.
feel I don't there's a different the feeling. It's like things don't go as smoothly, it seems to go off the rails in a way that's like, a little bit more crazy.
And I love that pragmatic touch you bring to it. So if you're listening, this is the pragmatism. It is not about what you're not doing enough of.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, we often feel, and this is what I get from so many clients that show up at my door, they don't take care of themselves. They don't, and they're haggard and they're tired. And had someone today who found me and said, I'm making a lot of money. This is successful, but I want to be able to spend time with my family and create those memories with my kids,
Mhm.
and be able to work less but generate more from a place of well-being. and
Mhm.
and I that's really amazing that she got that. Most of us don't get that. And that's about self-love and self-care. And so that devotion to yourself, I find, is critical. And I have you and Walt Hampton to thank. And Walt is interviewed separately on my podcast because I just knew if I put you two together, we'd be talking for hours, I think. Walt and Tom did this interview event, the two of them. And I realized as a result of that I had fallen off my morning routine because of COVID. And so I have you both to thank. I got back on my morning routine because I asked you guys a question. And I had actually asked this question myself when I had interviewed Byron Katie years ago. And for those of you who don't know Byron Katie, go look her up. Um, we were talking about this very same thing for women lawyers. And I said, what do you say to the women lawyers that say, I don't have time for this? I can't get up in the morning and have a routine. I have children. And she said, get up half an hour before your children. If that means you got to get up at 4:30 in the morning, then do it, because that's sacred time for you. So I listened to you and Walt, and I started doing that again daily, religiously, in that peace and that quiet in that morning. I wasn't exactly sure what I was doing again, but here's what happened. Let me put Tom's beautiful explanation into motion. I have been dealing with Apple products crashing. So the whole system went down, which means the business kind of goes down, right? This happened 2 days ago. And I went to bed Monday night and the system crashed. Really didn't sleep much on Monday night, but I woke up Tuesday and I said, I will not stray from my morning routine. If I stray from my morning routine and jump into firefighting mode and run to the office, figure out Apple support, run to the mall, to the Apple store, yelling and screaming, nothing will work out for me. So I just got up and I did what I normally do, right? And this is like a fire's burning in the background, right? Like the system is down, nothing coming in, nothing going out, and we're getting ready for a launch, right? I was like, doesn't matter. And I got to tell you, Tom, it's exactly what you said. Please, listeners, just heed what he's saying. I was in a state of joy all day long dealing with this giant fire I was trying to put out. And at the
Mhm.
end of the day, like, the launch sequence concept worked way better. Like, I had like all these people that signed up on the list, and I wasn't even like really present to them, right? But I was just showing up and doing my thing. So what he says really works. And you don't have to believe me, just try it for yourself, but do not stray from some kind of a morning routine.
You
So
know, I want
go
to add
ahead.
something to what you said too, because in my work with people, it's not about layering more things on to do.
Mm.
It's actually about taking things off or taking things away to make room for what's really important. And and that's applicable. It depends on what's in your life. I can't make a blanket statement to everyone about everything. It's just whatever's in your life that needs to be moved aside or given a different priority so that you can make room for that one important thing, making that connection.
So important. Yes, yes. We're not adding more to your plate, that's for sure. We're actually giving you breathing room, I think, to be able to do less and have more fun with it and make more money and whatever you want as a result of it.
Yeah. Let me
So,
give you a quick example.
yeah,
It takes no time to be less judgmental and more forgiving. So it's not saying do a forgiveness practice and forgive all these people and make a list. And you could do that, but it's not what it's about. It's like just in the moment to moment, withhold your judgment and be forgiving. Withhold your judgment, be accepting. That is a powerful practice all by itself. And it doesn't take
And
any time. It takes no time.
it takes a change in perception is what it
Hmm.
takes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And people
So,
appreciate.
oh, so much so. Your life will be so much easier and you'll have so many more raving fans. Your brand will be shiny and fantastic for sure. So, Tom, people may think you and I've got all of this together and we're perfect, but we're far
Oh, no.
from it. So, what's one challenge on your plate that you can bring to the table that you and I can brainstorm over or I can coach you through so that we can all learn from the fact that you're growing too?
Probably the biggest thing right now is, um, I've been in the process of refining my message, getting more clear about what I'm about, what I bring to people, and getting that launched more clearly into the world. And so my actual launch moves back a little bit further as more things seem to occur in my daily life that you know how it is. Just get
Oh, yeah.
preoccupied, putting out fires, dealing with the day to day. And I have a much bigger ambition, a much bigger intention to get what I'm doing out to the audience, to a larger audience, to where it'll make a difference for people. So the challenge is getting out of my own way to get it out there.
And what's one thing you need to work on in order to make that happen for yourself? And what would it look like if you got out of your own way and embraced that?
You know what it is? It's been this for a long time. It's um, being willing, just like this, to be willing to be in front of a lot more people. See, I don't know how many people are on this call, so it's just you and I teaching what I teach and sharing what I have to share.
Mm.
That always tends to show up as like an obstacle, like, well, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? But I know it's all there. I have the curriculum, I have the resources, then it's not trusting myself quite enough to actually get out there.
It sounds very similar to what I'm working through, which is I'm going to reframe it and tell me if I'm inaccurate. Fear of success, right? If I show up in front of all these people and if all the right things come up and if it all works,
Hmm.
then what do I do with all this like wow, we people and it'll be it and I am not the end all be all, but it's coming through me and I'm the catalyst for it. And owning our greatness becomes really the lesson, right?
Right. And, fear of success. Like, what am I going to do with all the, like a whole new set of obligations, a whole new set of demands will come with success,
It's a
certainly.
new role we take on. Same identity used a different way. I'm the same person. You're the same person. We just now go from identity of chiropractor or lawyer to identity of whatever our next message is about who we are and sharing our divine with others. And that new role takes some getting used to because new people show up and new expectations are set and people look at you differently. And that groundedness, though, working on that groundedness. So, as Tom has mentioned several times, I want to wrap this up with the idea of Course in Miracles. That's what's coming through. For
Hmm.
those of you who've never heard of Course in Miracles is something everyone will get around to looking into in their own time. And it is one way of making sure you're grounded and you have an ability to uh, finish my sentence for me, Tom. I know how I came onto the course, but tell us how you use the course. I think I'm running out of words for explaining the course well enough.
I know sometimes it's hard to explain because it's thick, it's dense, but it's filled with universal truths, universal spiritual principles. And it itself takes a certain commitment to read and comprehend the principles that it contains, and it's filled with pearls of wisdom. And that's one of the
Mm,
things I love about the course. But it also acts as something as a guide on. It has daily lessons. So every day I read the lesson for the day and contemplate that and take it into my daily life. And it's really in a way like a retraining the mind, as I was saying
mm,
earlier, from
mm,
being one of judgment to one of forgiveness.
mm.
And so it becomes
Amen.
part of my forgiveness practice. And the course supports that.
Yes, absolutely. The course has central tenets, and it's not religious. It refers to Jesus, but please know it's not religious whatsoever. It is the same Course in Miracles that Marianne Williamson speaks of, and Marianne was born into the Jewish faith, so it's really agnostic of religion. I got
Mhm.
indoctrinated into it when I read Gary Renard's book, The Disappearance of the Universe, because he
Oh, yeah.
references it, explains it very well. So it was a good intro for me into the course, for
Mhm.
those of you who might be curious, but I'm sure there's a million different ways. And there's an organization called acim.org. That's the link. It's the Foundation for Inner Peace. So if anybody is interested, it can only benefit you. And everyone has their own journey. So, my friend Tom, any parting words for our listeners?
Yes. One thing I want to stress again, and we've been talking about it all along, is take the time, whatever time you have, to deepen and strengthen your connection to source, to that which created you, to the intelligence that lives inside of you, and take care of yourself. Take care of your health by, exercising, eating well, getting enough rest, and taking time for a daily practice that'll help you to it'll give you a resource. So in the times of trouble, the times of challenge, when it's time to put out a fire, you've got something to draw upon to help keep you steady through the day and through whatever it is you're facing in your life.
And that is
You,
really the benefit, and that's a beautiful benefit.
yeah.
So, where can we find you, Tom, if listeners want to get in touch with you? You got a
So
website?
I have a website. It's called reclaimthesacred.com. That's my work, Reclaim the Sacred. And on there is my contact info, my phone number, email. You can reach me like that. And just read a little bit about me and get a sense of, you know, what is this guy all about who calls himself a shaman and used to be a chiropractor, which both might raise a question in your own mind, like, who is this guy? But that's where you can find me.
Fantastic. And do you know the dates of the next fire? The on Zoom?
Um, I'm getting ready to put out a course, which is what I was just alluding to earlier, launching a course, a program. I do one-on-one and small group kinds of coaching, and then fires are as called.
When they come through. Yes, I
Yeah,
got it. All right,
and
my
I'll do
friend.
more Zoom fires and stuff like that.
It was
Yeah,
fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us. Listeners,
yeah,
please take this information, use it as you will. Share this podcast if you liked it, or if you didn't like it. If you're sitting in discomfort with it, that's awesome too, because you're not growing, you're not changing, your brand's not evolving unless you're uncomfortable with something that you can learn from and transform into your growth tool. Okay. So if you're uncomfortable, that's a fabulous place to be. Because if you weren't uncomfortable, you would know everything. And then you wasted an hour with us. But it's never a waste anyway, because Tom is just fun. So share this podcast. Know you're fantastic. And want to thank you again, Tom, for giving us your time and your wisdom. It's amazing. And until next time, Ketchy G out.